I'm going to like to welcome everybody to our 6 p.m. work session, January 20th for the Village of Vicksburg. We'll do roll call, Tracy.
Bailey?
Here.
Frisbee?
Here.
Holmes?
Here.
Keller?
Here.
Merrill? Here. Reister? Here. President Adams?
Here. In front of you, you have agenda for the work session. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of same.
Make a motion we approve tonight's work session agenda.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, this is public citizens time for any agenda item. I don't believe we have any public citizens that would like to address the council at this time. So we'll proceed into our audit report. Aaron, are you going to address the council?
Okay, thank you very much. So you have in front of you, you should have the presentation handout, and what I've done is I've taken some excerpts out of the presentation handout and put them into the PowerPoint. But before I get started, a couple of general comments. Our thanks to Jim, Michelle, Steve, and the rest of the village staff for their courtesy, cooperation, and assistance. I thought the field work went very well again this year. This is our second year as your auditors. What I plan to do is highlight what I think are the key areas of the report, but if you have questions, feel free to stop me at any time and we can go through those. I always start off my presentations with a reminder that the objective or the purpose of an audit is to express opinions on the financial statements. The purpose of an audit is not to detect fraud or give an opinion on your internal controls. And that is because fraud detection, deterrence, and prevention, as well as sound internal controls, are management's responsibility. In the bound report, the bound audited financial statements, we do have the independent auditor's report that is presented on pages 3 and 4. And in the second paragraph of the independent auditor's report on page 3, we have highlighted the responsibility for the financial statements as being management's responsibility. And management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. And this is the second, or at least part of the second paragraph on the screen here. That would include the design and implementation and maintenance of internal controls over that preparation and fair presentation as well. Our responsibility as your auditors, this is in the third paragraph of the independent auditor's report. Our responsibility is to express opinions on the financial statements based on our audit. And we've expressed those opinions on page 4 in the first paragraph. And that paragraph reads, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. That is the important phrase, that present fairly in all material respects is what we refer to as an unmodified or a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that we can provide for a set of financial statements. And that's what you want to see as a council, is that unmodified opinion. And to put that into some perspective for you, there are 3 types of opinions we could express. You do have the unmodified opinion. We could express a qualified opinion that might read something like, except for capital assets, the financial statements are fairly presented. Obviously, you don't want to see that. We could issue or express an adverse opinion. The financial statements do not present fairly the financial position of the village. The only other option that we have when it comes to an audit is to disclaim an opinion. We did not or could not audit the financial statements of the village. So you don't want any of those alternatives. You do have the highest level of assurance that we can provide with that unmodified opinion. Pages 12 and 13 of the bound report make up the government-wide financial statements. And I've highlighted a few things here. This is from the presentation handout. This is page 2. This is from page 12 of the bound report, the statement of net position. And this is a snapshot as of June 30th, 2019, of your assets, deferred outflows, liabilities, and net position.
Don't tilt it. There you go. Thank you. Sorry.
All right. And a couple of ratios that I like to look at. One being the current ratio. So for governmental activities, the current ratio is 44.5. So that tells you that you can cover your current obligations 44.5 times over with your current financial resources, which is excellent. At this point last year, or June 30, 2018, you were at 25.5, so it did increase quite a bit. For the business type activities, that current ratio is 4.6. Again, very healthy. It's a little bit of a decrease from the previous year. You were at 5.3, but still covering your obligations nearly 5 times over is a good position to be in. you have liquidity, and you're able to cover your invoices, your payables. Another area that I like to look at would be the unrestricted net position compared to your expenses. And for governmental activities, that your unrestricted net position was $1.2 million compared to expenses of $1.9 million. So that represents 65% of your annual expenses for the year. At June 30, 2018, you're at 63%. So again, an improvement in net position compared to expenses. For the business type activities, the unrestricted net position was about $1.4 million compared to expenses of almost $2 million. So you're at about 70% for the business type activities. Your business type activities would include your sewer, your water, and the golf course funds. Also an improvement from the previous year because at June 30, 2018, you're at 46%. The statement of activities is also a government-wide financial statement prepared once a year for the audit report. That's the only time you see the government-wide financial statements is in the audited financial statements themselves. And I always say this is a little backwards because we start with expenses in the left-hand column and we add back in program revenues to come up with a net expense or revenue or net revenue in the right-hand column. And so all of your governmental activities have a net expense, which is to be expected because you do rely on your property taxes and your state shared revenue to operate those activities. As you read down the column on the statement of activities, you do add back in those general revenues to come up to your change in net position. And for governmental activities, your change in net position was an increase of $644,473. And for business type activities, you added or improved net position by $567,764. So a good year in terms of the full accrual financial statements, the government-wide financial statements. But then we get into the fund level financial reporting, and this level of reporting should be more familiar to you. This is the level at which your budgets are prepared, and the interim reporting that you get throughout the year is done at the fund level. So pages 14 and 15 of the bound report represent the governmental funds financial statements, and I tend to focus on the general fund as the operating fund for the village. So on the balance sheet, well, let me back up a second. Governmental funds financial statements are prepared on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So it's a different focus, different measurement focus than the government-wide financial statements. This is a current financial resources focus. So on the balance sheet, you don't see things like capital assets or long-term debt, any of those long-term items. You just see cash, receivables, payables, those short-term items on the balance sheet. And I look at fund balance, the equity section of the balance sheet for a measure of financial health. And there are 5 classifications of fund balance that you could have, and those would be non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Now, as you read down the column, non-spendable fund balance obviously is not available for future use. Restricted fund balance comes from external parties. So if the state were to give you a grant that could only be spent on parks and rec, let's say, that would be restricted fund balance if you had any left over at the end of the year. Committed fund balance is also a kind of restriction, but it's done by the governing body. So the village council can commit fund balance through the passage of a resolution. But the last 2 components, the assigned and unassigned portions of fund balance, are what you have available for future use. You can assign and unassign fund balance at will. You can make a budget amendment and change your fund balance assignments. So collectively, I refer to those as unrestricted. And you had, as of June 30th, 2019, you had assigned fund balance for capital acquisitions of $228,250. And you had unassigned fund balance in the general fund of $796,969. When we compare that to your annual expenditures for the year, and as you can see on the screen, at $1.5 million, that assigned and unassigned fund balance represents approximately 65% of your annual expenditures, which is excellent. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends that you maintain a minimum fund balance in your general fund that is equal to 2 months of normal operations. Well, 2 out of 12 months is about 17%, and you're at 65. As of June 30th, 2018, that calculation was at about 85%, but you took more action or took action to commit more fund balance in this fiscal year that we just finished our audit. So a total of $700,000 has been formally earmarked by the council through those fund balance commitments. All right. Because the financial statements don't work very well on a PowerPoint, you can't really see them, I included some charts and graphs here. And just to highlight a few things, this is again, just the general fund the past 5 years. And you can see the activity has kind of been sporadic. It did increase quite a bit in 2016, the overall activity, and then back down in 2017. But the important trend here is that revenues have exceeded expenditures in each of the past 5 years. So you've added to your fund balance. That's the difference between your revenues and expenditures is the change in that yellow bar. That yellow bar represents total fund balance. So total revenues for the year were just over $2 million for 2019, $2,086,000, which was an increase of about 4.8% over the 2018 revenues. Total expenditures, $1,566,000. That was an increase of about 9.7% over the previous year's expenditures. And you added to your fund balance $519,842. I've got a couple of pie charts here that follow. This one being the composition of your general fund revenues. As you might have guessed, property taxes are the largest component of your revenue for the general fund at 66%. In the previous year, that was at 61%. The second largest source of funds is intergovernmental, which would be primarily your sales tax, state shared revenue from the state, at about 20%. It's 19.73. Last year, that was at 22%, so a little bit of a shift, but overall, pretty consistent from 18 to 19. This is a pie chart that details the composition of your general fund expenditures, and the largest use of funds for the village is public safety at 49%. That was 47% in the previous year. That's followed by general government at 16%. That was 16% in 2018 as well. And then public works at 15%. That was 18% in the previous year.
I do have a question.
Sure. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, I'm wondering what the other stands for in both of these pie charts.
Yeah, well, in your audited financial statements, it's every other function. So, and these were prepared right from the financial statements. So on the expenditure chart, that would include community and economic development, recreation and culture, capital outlay, and debt service.
Okay, thank you.
So they're all, if I would have detailed it all out, it would have been pretty small pieces of the pie, so it kind of took away from the.
Yeah, I just had a question about it, so
Sure.
thank you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, please do ask questions at any time. Stop me when we go through this, because I start to talk fast, and you can interrupt me at any time. This line graph that you see here on the screen, this is a 5-year trend of your unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So again, this is in terms of percentages, and you can see that that we started in 2015 at about 21%. It dropped down to 18% in 2016. But then it had an upward trend, and you were 85% in 2018, and then back down to 65%. But that decrease was largely because you committed more fund balance. You took that formal action to set aside or earmark portions of your fund balance. So again, very healthy. The GFOA recommends that minimum of 17%. You're well above the minimum. In terms of dollars, the same line graph. So the blue line is where you actually were, and then that brownish red line is the 17% of each year's expenditures. So you were close in 2016. You were just a hair above the recommended minimum, but then have done very well since then. The proprietary funds financial statements are on pages 17 through 20 of your audited financial report. And the proprietary funds, again, are the water, the sewer, and the golf course funds. So the statement of net position, well, let me back up a second. Proprietary funds are prepared on the same basis of accounting as your government-wide financial statements. So these are prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting. The proprietary funds will have those capital assets and any long-term debt items, net pension liability, and so forth. All of those items are included in these financial statements, but there's more detail. It breaks it down by fund. So again, just to hit the highlights here, the unrestricted net position compared to your operating expenses, and I factor out depreciation, and I do that because depreciation is a non-cash expense. So when we make that comparison, the sewer fund was at 122% of your operating expenses less depreciation. That was an increase over the previous year. You were at 84%. The water fund ended the year at 149%. In the previous year, that was at 286, so that one did decrease quite a bit. And then the golf course, while it seems low at 15%, that's excellent compared to the previous year, because last year you were at negative 14. So a big swing in the golf course fund, and we brought that, or you brought that unrestricted net position positive. So good job on the golf course fund. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in that position, again, just to hit the highlights here, the sewer fund, the difference between revenues and expenses, you increased or improved your net position by $336,000. The water fund actually decreased slightly by $27,000, and then the golf course fund increased net position by $258,000. So this is total net position, not just the unrestricted portion, but total net position for the golf course did increase by almost $259,000.
Was the improvement of the golf course relative to the employee retirement fund?
Bill,
you're gonna have to hit your microphone.
Apologize. Was the improvement at the golf course, what caused that?
Well, there was a couple of things, but I highlighted in here that the net pension liability was being allocated among all of the funds, and there was a change in the allocation because those employees are gone now, and so there's a reduction in the pension allocation. It brought your administration expenses down to $165,000.
Okay, thank you.
So I've got a couple of graphs on each fund here. This bar graph shows you the composition of the net position for the sewer fund. And if you can't tell from the bar, because these can have an optical illusion here, but total net position did increase. That's pretty obvious to tell from the graph. But down below, you've got the numbers, and the numbers will show you that each of the components of net position increased from 18 to 19, which is, again, excellent job there. And that largely because there was a planned increase in the rates in preparation for bonding down the road. A couple years, right? 2 years. Oops, I went the wrong way. There we go. Then this is the line graph that shows you the percentage of net position as a percentage of operating expenses less depreciation. Again, a little sporadic here, but you started at 120%, dropped down to 70, up to 86, then kind of even at 84, I guess, a little bit of a decrease, then up to 122%. For the water fund, the total net position did decrease here. Your unrestricted portion decreased, but the other two components, the restricted and the amount invested in capital assets, actually increased from 18 to 19. And then here's the line graph that compares the unrestricted net position to operating expenses less depreciation. So, but part of this is a little bit deceptive as well. 2019, you're down to 149%. But in 2019, you had some large maintenance expenses, including the water tower maintenance, that I wouldn't necessarily consider to be normal operations. You're not going to do that maintenance every single year. So I would expect to see that bump back up in 2020. The golf course, as I said, you went from a negative unrestricted net position to positive. So you're at a negative 166 in 2018 to a positive 102,000 in 2019. And then your invested in capital assets did decrease a little bit because of depreciation expense. But there's the line graph comparing the unrestricted net position to your operating expenses. And like I said, that's quite a turnaround. You went from a negative 14% to a positive 15%. I went through that pretty quickly, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the council?
Actually, please use your mics. I know
I'm just to clarify, your organization works specifically with municipalities, is that correct?
Yeah, I do. The organization, or our firm works with a lot of different types, but I specialize in governmental and not-for-profit.
To what, can you share this kind of to what extent? I'm just trying to get perspective here. Going somewhere with these questions, I'm just trying to get perspective as far as your organization.
As a firm, we audit a couple of hundred municipalities.
Okay. When you look at our audit, you said 2 years now. I'm just curious from your perspective, when you look at other municipalities, what percentile would you put us in? Would you put us in, like, way in the 50th percentile, the 20th percentile?
In terms of financial health?
In terms, I would say, when you look at our books in terms of financial health, but also, more importantly, I would say the fiscal responsibility that we're showing as a community.
I think you show a great deal of fiscal responsibility. I don't have too many clients that have committed fund balance to the extent that this village has. You're planning for the future. You've got some large capital projects that you want to do, and you're planning for those, and that's pretty cool to see, actually. So.
Is that something that you don't see in communities our size typically? Is that lack of planning?
Yeah,
Is it
well,
more shoot from the hip?
it is a lot of reactionary action instead of progressive and planning for things with similar sized clients. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Any other questions from the council? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the 2018-19 report.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any further questions by the council? Hearing none, we'll do roll call.
Bailey? Frisbee?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Keller?
Yes.
Merrill?
Yes.
Reister?
Yes.
President Adams?
Yes. We've approved our 2018-19 audit report, and I want to thank Siegfried Crandall for helping us down this road. Steve, it's been a pleasurable trip, and thank the staff. Do you have any comments, Steve?
I just think the village has come a long way. I was looking out at the website today from the 2015-2016 audit, and there were about 11 or 12 audit comments, and I read through all the responses, and I was just thinking about this meeting and thinking about quite the long way that you've come. So, and I appreciate working with you all, and hope it continues.
Good. Okay, Aaron, thank you very much.
thank you.
And at this time, Mr. Mallory, are you going to present the second quarter budget amendments?
Thank you, President Adams. Do have some comments from staff's perspective, reference the audit just prior to setting up second quarter amendments and discussing where we are with those. But before, I'd really like to thank Mr. Bill Mears, who's here. And you can see tonight additional investments that he has made in the tables that we're at, the professional dressing. Worked well with our team that put together the plan to stream the meeting on adjustments that they really have bent over backwards for us with our goal in our best practice model to put on a professional meetings and hold them. So on behalf of everyone at staff, and I'm sure this council, thanks, Bill. You've been great to work with, and I hope it's a long-term partnership here. So during the work session, oversight and government or governance of financial affairs is amongst the most important of the responsibility of village officials. Inadequate oversight can lead to abuses such as embezzlement, misuse of and/or misappropriation of funds, and general loss of esteem for the municipality and its officials. Excessive control or oversight can render your village ineffective and incapable of delivering important services. that quotes from the General Law Village Officials Handbook of the Michigan Municipal League. We feel it is important that village council members have information from recent audits and an understanding of some of the recommendations from staff which have been supported and or adopted by previous village councils. It is in that vein that we have provided a summary which includes a timeline for each fiscal year with agenda items of significance that have been presented to the council for their support and or adoption. The items of significance were ones in which would demonstrate a positive impact on the culture of our municipality, as well as impacting our ability to effectively manage the village operation. Make no mistake, it's the approval and actions of this council and prior councils that have set the foundation for the village to progress in its financial stewardship. I have presented to previous village councils about the lack of developed plans within the village of Vicksburg. These include plans involving capital needs and fiscal responsibility. It has been central to this team's mission since August of 2016 to develop, implement, and execute appropriate plans for a municipality our size. From my perspective, the yearly budgets are the most important plan that I present to the village council. I feel the results of the audit are an evaluation of the execution and performance of those plans. The plans have been ever developing and fluid over the past 42 months. Throughout this time period, I have talked about the journey we are on together, a journey in which we are all committed to becoming a model municipality of our size. Our mutual goal of becoming the model village in our nation, a goal that we can definitely reach. I truly believe that the results of the past two audits indicates two important facts. First, that the village of Vicksburg is well on its way to becoming a model municipality. And second, our work has just begun, as this is a marathon journey, not a sprint. The 2018-19 fiscal year budget was the second fiscal year budget that we had the opportunity to present to the village council for adoption. We are very proud of the results of this audit, which were presented by Aaron Stevens tonight. And for his oversight and input the last 2 years, I personally thank you. I also want to take time to recognize the efforts of Steve Breyer. His team at Siegfried Crandall have been second to none in their mentorship, in guidance and advice to us on what we need to do to become a model agency. So thanks, Steve. I'm most proud of the team we have assembled and their performance, their pride and their passion that they display on a daily basis. Their commitment to making the village of Vicksburg a model municipality is evident and unmatched in my 30-year professional career. At our regular village council meeting tonight, I will present to this council the detailed recommendations of our next step in the journey I speak about, a journey that we are on with the citizens we serve. We will present to the village council our recommendations for commitments and assignments of monies that I will highlight in a few moments. We'll also provide a short review of the different streams of revenue the village receives, and we'll highlight a few examples of how we've been able to accomplish the auditing results that were presented tonight. Of most importance, our advice to this council on how we will continue an upward trajectory for the next 5 years. We have acknowledged in the past that we needed to step up our communication game, and it is our sincere hope that you and the public we serve recognize our efforts in this area tonight. It's a big night for our municipality, as it is the first time that the village of Vicksburg is streaming our governmental meetings live on the World Wide Web. Our citizens are able to view the meeting by connecting on our website at vicksburgmi.org or our new page on YouTube titled Village of Vicksburg Government. I'd like to personally thank our Director of Community Engagement, Alex Lee, for leading this endeavor and making it happen. We'll go into detail at our 7 p.m. meeting, commitments of money to continue a tax stabilization fund and a municipal building. We'll also detail assignments of money for capital needs that include a new pole barn building for DPW, defined benefit pension reserve, DPW police and village hall equipment, IT technology needs village-wide, as well as the importance of our parks and recreations needs, wants, and wishes. We will also detail a savings plan for an updated large parking lot located behind the Distant Whistle hardware store and the adjoining businesses on Main Street to the west. There are 8 revenue streams of money that flow into the village government. These are 1, general fund property taxes, 2, major street fund, 3, local street fund. Both the major and local street fund are money that we receive from the state of Michigan through Act 51. 4, downtown development tax money in our DDA district. 5, brownfield funds. 6, Angels Crossing Golf Course. The last 2 funds, 7 and 8, are our utility funds involving our sewer operations and water. We have been operating in a manner that lawfully identifies which stream of money we can use and attempt to use all revenue streams that we can prior to using our citizens' general fund tax dollars. This is to ensure that we create a culture that does not anticipate or need to raise our millage rate to operate government. A small example of how this works is the fact that we will present in the 2021 fiscal budget this June the need for a new patrol vehicle for our police department. The new vehicle will replace an 8-year-old patrol car that has in excess of 100,000 miles on it. The difference is, unlike prior years in which tax dollars from that current fiscal year were utilized, we have anticipated this need and set aside dollars in the 2 previous fiscal years to ensure that we will already have the money. It's one small example of how we are saving cash to pay for future capital needs that, if executed properly, will ensure no additional debt is ever placed on our taxpayers, and specifically general fund debt. The plan, if executed, will have our village general fund debt free by 2033 at the latest. The outside accountants have confirmed tonight that this is not a typical of municipalities our size. We should all be proud of how we are operating government, but resolute in our commitment to continue the journey we're on. We are reminded on a weekly basis of citizens' mistrust of government. This is mistrust at all levels of government, federal, state, and even local government. We need to understand and accept this and do our very best to overly communicate our intentions, actions, and even our results. We will remain steadfast in our commitment to transparency, communication, and execution of the policy that this council adopts. I'm happy to answer any questions about the audit or any matters of this time, but I thank you for your attention and patience with the presentation, and I look forward to delivering my village manager report at the regular scheduled council meeting tonight. And I'm not sure if you have questions of us specific to the
Any
audit results.
questions from the council at this time? None? Okay.
Okay. Specific to the second quarter budget amendments, we have provided in the council packets summaries that the actual amendments are going to be presented February 17th, 2020. That's due to making sure that all the numbers have meshed out going through December 31st. The majority of us, Michelle and I, were on vacation through over the Christmas break and then battled flu. But the document that we did provide, if you had was in red some staff actions that will take place between now and February 17th that has money in specific line item funds. I would remind the council that our fiscal year budget is approved at an activity level, but we still monitor all debits and credits to the individual line to ensure that we're transparent on where the dollars are going to. So we did want to provide that to you tonight. I've also brought updated balance information if you had questions, but that detailed presentation will come on the second meeting of February.
Does that complete the second quarter report?
That, unless there's any questions.
Is there questions from the council? No questions? Okay. We ready for public comments on non-agenda items? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the council on a non-agenda item? If not, there's going to be another opportunity at 7 o'clock where we may have some actual citizens in the audience, I guess. So, any comments, Jim?
One comment, if the council wishes to take 10 minutes, I believe we can add it at this time, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong. But Bobby Durkee is here, and on the codification, we're not going to ask, that will be in front of the council at the next council meeting. But if it's okay with everyone, Bobby can take 3-4 minutes and explain to you what that's going to entail, as it's been something that staff has worked on now for about 2 years, and we've rounded third base, headed for home, if that's okay.
I'm good with that as the council.
Please.
Okay, let's do it.
And again, there won't be a vote at this meeting, it'll be at the next meeting.
Yeah, but I don't know if they came tonight or next meeting.
I know.
Oh.
Mike will ask in between meetings.
Oh, well, you could visit me at home with my kids and you'll see exactly where that thing went. Thanks, Jim. This is a good idea, and I'm glad I brought it with me just in case, because codification just sounds confusing. And essentially what I'll be presenting is this work, which is a legal analysis by General Code. Our big code book, it's compiled and organized by an outside company, and we haven't had, we've had a lot of amendments over the years, think about 20 amendments, and those are all separate documents. So what General Code does is they take all of those and incorporate them into our overall code. And as they do that, they also do an analysis. Like if the zoning code talks to the streets chapter, the building chapter, they find glitches, or, hey, you reference a section that isn't valid anymore, or they look at some of your high-level stuff and compare it to state statutes. Some state statutes have changed. Or if they find something old or grammatical errors, they'll point it out. So they did that, and they give a full analysis, and they give recommendations for each item. So what this is, it was myself and working with the Planning Commission a little bit, going through that, and some things were changed, some things were not, some things are left as is. They looked at each chapter individually. For example, over 50% of the chapters were fine as is, and in order to streamline it, I identified a couple chapters which we should prioritize to change, and I'll show that all to everybody. But I guess the other thing that's important with this, what I present next week is not the final document. So per General Code's own recommendations, and they give a book of what our code would look like with the changes that accompanied this. So what this is, instead of just staff working, not communicating to you, they recommend bringing it to your Planning Commission and your council, or your legislative body. So what this is, I'm going to it'll be in the packet, all the changes made, and there's a couple attachments of changes, but the only real significant change was ones that we needed to do to match a state law, or adding definitions to the zoning code that didn't exist. So it's basically me showing the work and getting your input on it. Like the Planning Commission requested an extra month to review it, and they approved it unanimously. So what this is the okay, and then this gets sent back, and then in General Code has about 100 days to recompile it, and they send back, and I'm going to also send every amendment since 2017, which is not part of this. So then they give us, hey, here's what this document is going to look like, and then we have 45 business days to evaluate, where I will go through it, make sure they might catch, you know, something else that came up in the last 2 years, and then after that 45 business days, then I'm presenting the final recodification, where we'll notice we're recodifying our ordinance. Oshtemo Township did something similar before. So it's not necessarily, there are a few minor amendments to the code, but instead of digging into making amendments on recommendations, my thought was to get everything updated. And then once that's presented to you, that would be voting on those changes. And every change is outlined in this packet and an attachment, and easy to read and go through. And then at that point, it would go back in front of the council and you as well. And if approved, then we send it back and they give us new code books, and then we get it posted online, and it's a much more organized. And even the formatting, the tables and the stuff in our code are formatted very awkwardly. They eliminate all of that. So there's a lot of, I think for a developer, your citizen just looking to understand municipal code, it's going to be a vast improvement. And we even got to choose the colors of the book, so I picked burgundy and white. I think that was a good choice.
Was an excellent choice, Bobby. One thing as well is it will get us up to date, and then we can start looking at, again, with the best practice type model, any ordinance improvements that we need, but we know the foundation is good, that we don't have confusion within what has been put together through this process. So I think as we evolve over the next few years, it's going to be important on ordinances as well as our zoning in the growth of the city or village and where it's moving to.
Any questions
Yes,
for
would
Bobby?
like, if I could, I'm just curious as it relates to, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot to this. It's not going to be just a couple things. We got, I mean, there's, when you look at ordinances, I'm just curious, and I think that the window that's been laid out is like, you know, a couple years. And from my perspective, I continue to look at the community as it transforms in the coming couple years with the mill opening and the additional businesses coming to our community. And I'm just curious what your thoughts would be, or the council's thoughts. How would we collectively go about, I mean, entertaining ideas or thought? I mean, what if we, what if we want every storefront to be purple? I mean, how does that discussion, you know?
I think we're, from my perspective, beginning to put the pieces in this process together to be able to capture data and gather people's input. The equipment we're utilizing tonight, we can utilize for podcast information out to our citizens. The next project that we have in our community engagement is to look at different technology, whether it's Nixel and immediate text to our citizens and how we capture that. But it's key to get that input from businesses and citizens. I think in different areas that I anticipate in the next 18 months presenting to the council are a formal rental program and a rental inspection program. I think we currently don't have a grasp of what properties within our municipal boundaries are renting, and also to make sure that those properties are kept up to the standards that this community would expect, both in health and safety of citizens who live here. I believe that a fire inspection program, both on the business and rental side, will come in the future. Maybe another I can anticipate exploring and possibly putting in front of the council is oversight or governance as it relates to short-term rentals within the municipality. And all of that won't be in a vacuum or one person's philosophy. In each one of those three I've cited would be a lot of input, a lot of information and education to the council, and ultimately rest in the council's decision. But I think those are three areas that we'll be looking at to strengthen the governance or ordinances in. And Bobby, you can add to those thoughts if you have, or actually any of the staff members that are here.
The only thing I would add, and I think you were implying, Rick, that, well, what about if we want to enact an ordinance to make every building purple? I would say this phase is taking the scatter shot of documents, recognizing we haven't had a thorough analysis in 20 years, and making sure that the boat's got no holes in it first. Because a big part of making amendments, or if they're citizen or staff-driven amendments, is making sure that we do the outreach, get the communication. So there's, you know, more of an outreach side to make sure we have the feedback from the community, and then some ideas, you know, having that open debate where it might take a meeting or 2 or 3 to hash it out. So I think that's phase 2 of the ordinances. So.
I'd just like to say I really appreciate the fact this is finally coming to home finally. When I was on the planning commission, we were just starting discussing this, the recodification, and it seemed like that was over 3 years ago.
Mhm.
So, and going through the ordinances, I know what a labyrinth and maze it is to get through to look at anything. So this is a great first step. So congrats on finally getting it pushed through.
Thank you. And it was obviously, you know, my focus is usually the zoning ordinance. So now, for better or for worse, I have a much better understanding of the full code. And it was a good analysis. Just, there was a lot of things better than I thought, but and we've also got a direction of the major changes where we should look at, hey, this one could be troublesome. So.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Bobby.
You're welcome.
And with that, any council comments before we adjourn? Julie?
Hey, Bobby, I was just curious, is there any way to like put this rough draft? Because it's in flux. Is there a way to put that out there that people can kind of look at it? And I know things are constantly changing, but it would be kind of helpful, like sign ordinances and things like that.
It's already online. People can go to our website where it is located. One of the realities I have found specific to the sign ordinance is there's misinformation, or there's one ordinance specific to a certain type of sign, but different ordinances that govern other, and people are well intentioned, but my recommendation is we put our cell phones on the business cards for a reason. Give us a call, we'll look into it and get back to people. But
And to add to that confusion, for example, the way ours is set up, it's a scan of the document right now, where once this is done, it'll be a searchable, it's gonna be much more user-friendly, but because we scan that plan adopted in the 90s and we've amended it, if you will go to our code page, there's a tab that says new codes. So someone could innocently go to the sign code and read it, but if they didn't see the new tab, that's where Chapter 50 in our village code could be different than the one that's just happens to be in the overall document. So where once this is done, we basically get rid of all that, and then general code builds it for us, where what we're using now are scans of the existing documents. So, and all of that is available, and I don't know if you're referencing this where I do the changes. It was in the Planning Commission packet, and I'd be glad to share it with Jim if we want to post it on the website, and I would intend it to be with your guys' packet when it's presented, so you have time to digest it.
I don't know, as a planning commission member, I think we're jumping the gun. I mean, we're not that far away from getting this recodified and putting it out there in the public. It's already, information's there, very helter-skelter, but with what you're doing now, I think it'll be in due ample time. It'll be up on the webpage. The beautiful thing, as you say, is it's gonna be searchable by a keyword. If you want a sign ordinance, you type in sign ordinance, and it takes you right to the ordinance in question. But thank you, Bobby, for all your hard work. Director Durkee, you've done a great job, and this is a really big move forward for us.
Thank you. And the only other thing I would add is this was done with Andrew Horn over at Horn. I can't remember all their names. I apologize. So that was all done. So thank you.
thanks, Bobby.
Okay. Is there any further comments by council? Questions? Hearing none, we're going to adjourn our work session. I think we have some questions before starting up our next meeting. Welcome to the Village Council meeting for Monday, January the 20th. If you'll join me in a pledge of allegiance, it'd be appreciated. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll take a moment of silence, and then Tracy, you'll help us with roll call.
Bailey?
Here.
Frisbee?
Here.
Holmes?
Here.
Keller?
Here.
Merrill? Here. Reister? Here. President Adams?
Here. We have an agenda for tonight's meeting in front of us. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of same.
So moved.
There's support.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have an agenda for tonight's meeting. I see no scheduled appearances. Tracy?
Mr. Adams,
Yes, sir.
we potentially might have our state representative Brant Iden. He is at other functions and was going to try to be here. So just to prep you, sir, he might walk in at some point during this meeting that might want to update everyone on ongoings up at the state.
Good. Look forward to seeing him. I see no scheduled appearances. Excuse me.
Excuse me, President Adams, we actually do have a guest from the Kalamazoo County Clerk's Department. Sarah is here.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to address the council tonight?
That would be wonderful, thank you so much.
Okay. You're at that point on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Oh. I am Sarah Joshi from Kalamazoo County Government. I am Deputy County Clerk and Election Specialist. And so sorry for my tardiness. I was waiting for you all at Brady Township Hall. I got my information confused. So I am here tonight in support of city and township clerks' efforts to promote poll worker recruitment. You might be surprised to know that it takes nearly 1,000 poll workers to fully adequately staff a countywide election here in Kalamazoo County. And right now we are about 250 workers short countywide. So County Clerk Tim Snow and I have embarked on a little project to encourage especially working professionals to take a day of vacation and help out with this effort. It's only 4 election dates for the year, and we have one coming up March 10th with the presidential primary, so we can certainly use all the applications we can get in the coming days and weeks in order to have people trained and ready to go for the March 10th primary. Let's see, people often think that it's not a paid position, that it's a volunteer position, and that's not correct. Depending on the jurisdiction where you work, you may make between about $120 and $150 for the day, and paid training and lots of support is included. You'll have a dedicated precinct chairperson to ask questions of and be a resource, and then your local Brady Township Clerk, Michelle Crawford, backs them up if there are questions. Michelle has us at the county, and we have the bureau, so you have lots of support. It's a fun day. A lot of precincts have brownies. You get to see your neighbors. It's just a fun time to be out, and you're serving on the front lines of democracy in a really, really important role. So we certainly hope that you will do this. You do need to be 18 years old, be a registered Michigan voter with reliable transportation. And I always tell people it helps if you have average computer skills and excellent people skills. So I have some brochures that I can leave here. It does have the application on it. You can return that application either to your township clerk or the township clerk where you would like to work, or you can submit that to me at the county. Again, I'm Sarah Joshi, Deputy County Clerk and Election Specialist. I will also leave with you some posters that highlight the need for election workers as well. So if you have a place to hang those, we would be most grateful for your support.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Who can I leave these with?
I'll take it
Right
right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Quick question, is there any way that information could be inputted to the village website so that it's available for them to have access to?
Yes, I do have some information. We have a link on the county website, and I can send the graphic. There's more information too available, I should have mentioned, at michigan.gov/vote. Okay?
We'll work with Sarah to capture her link on our website as well.
I'll leave my
So it's
card.
there, so, all right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, and we're still in public officials time. And our next public official is Brett Iden, and Brett, thank you for stopping by.
Well, nice to see you. Thanks for having me. There is no way to sneak into this room the way you have it set up. I like how you've done that. Everybody's on record the minute they come in. I like that. Well, thanks for having me. Jim asked me to come down and just do a little bit of an update about what's happening in Lansing, so obviously happy to take any questions as well. But coming into a new year, obviously last year the auto no-fault issue took the main stage for the debate for the first and second quarter, and we rolled that in, and obviously the budget got pushed back. The timeline of last year's budget was a little bit slower than what you'd seen in the previous 8 years, actually. And I think that some of that came from just a function of divided government, perhaps a little bit. Obviously, the House and the Senate with Republican control, governor's office, and I think that there were just some learning curves that both sides had as we worked through that process. And we may still see a supplemental. There's a number of items that still didn't get funded that I know are priorities for both the legislature as well as the governor. And I think we may see that come as early as February. Governor's State of the State address occurring on the 29th of this month, which will be the final Wednesday of the month. And I think that that'll sort of lay out her path, her ideas going forward into this year, with one of those key items being the budget. We want to try to address that a little bit earlier than we did last year, and hopefully it won't involve so many supplementals and times that we have to come back to the negotiating table. Obviously, it's an election year, not for me, but for some up in Lansing, and so because of that, I think that the intent would be to try to set the stage a little bit earlier for many reasons as we get into this year. So the budget will take priority right after, obviously, next week with the governor's State of the State address. With that, there's a number of other policy items that I think are important to the speaker. This is his final term, mine as well, final year of our last term, I should say, and so he's got some agenda items. Majority Leader Shirkey's got some agenda items that he'd like to see accomplished before we get into the throes of the election year. But that's sort of the exciting things that are going on. I'm sure you have a few questions about some piece of legislation, some other things that are out there. Bill, I knew you had some questions last time we got together, but I'm happy to address anything that's out there.
Maybe just an update on your bill. What is it? 4816?
Sure, the Regional Event Center
Yes.
legislation? Sure. So that passed out of the House last week. We had good bipartisan support, 80 to 26, and obviously there's some confusion. I know I've answered some questions on that bill, but all that bill really does is give the county another economic development tool should they choose to exercise it. So that's not a mandate in any sort of way. It's simply utilizing some other economic development tools that are out there, such as those that constructed Cobo Hall in Detroit, Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, as well as Van Andel Place in Grand Rapids. Not the exact same tool, but something very similar, which would allow up to a 4% assessment on the hotel bills for those folks staying throughout Kalamazoo County. Again, that is just something that the county commission could exercise if they so chose to do so once the legislation was implemented. So my goal is to try to get that through the Senate. Hopefully the next couple weeks here, the next 2 or 3 weeks, get that to the governor's desk, where I do anticipate, because of the broad bipartisan support that we have from our local delegation, that would be signed into law, thus giving the county commission the ability to act on that should they choose. If not, it'll just sit there on the books, and perhaps another county commission could choose to address it at the time.
Okay. Any questions from council? Particular items?
If I could just ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
You're better at this than I am, I would imagine. Just a follow-up question regarding that. In looking at what that would mean for, obviously, downtown Kalamazoo, that would be an economic development opportunity for them. Realizing we have our own similar economic development opportunity here, where we're looking at people visiting our community I'm just curious how that discussion has developed. I would imagine it would have to have been addressed that, we've got, two groups that are looking at ways to impact their communities, and I'm just curious, from your perspective, being our Lansing, individual,
Sure.
how would you view that?
Yeah, so very good question, and I think it's one of these things where, and I want to make this very clear, the concept of an event type facility downtown has been discussed over 20-some years in Kalamazoo, and of course I served on the county commission from 2010 to 14, and this was a conversation then, and I've made it very clear that I've stayed out of that economic development discussion about what's right for the right regions and what makes sense for Kalamazoo. Obviously, it's no question, when I served on the county commission for 4 years, I openly supported the project, but that's not what the legislation is about. It's just another economic development tool, much like some of those that we passed in Lansing, which developers here in the community were able to take advantage of in various projects that they've been working on. So I've got a long record of just supporting those economic development projects, and I think that this is just another one of those particular tools. And where the county commission decides to go and how this board decides to lobby that commission to make those decisions is entirely up to this council and those talks with the other municipalities. So again, this is just something that I feel is good for the region and for Kalamazoo County. But
Any further questions by council?
Well, I suppose since we have his ear,
Sure.
in regards to the auto insurance reform, I'm sure there's people that are real curious where has it died off? Is it held up in?
Yeah, very good question. I'm getting ready to pay my renewal on February 2nd. So the legislation that passed in 19 stipulates that starting July 1. So when folks renew their auto insurance beginning July 1, they will see those reductions depending on the options that they choose. So basically the legislation gives folks an option as to what kind of coverage they would like. People can still choose the unlimited coverage should they choose, which is what we currently have, or you can choose a lesser amount. Obviously, if you take a lesser amount, because everybody's situation is different, but oftentimes their coverage is perhaps covered by an employer through their health insurance, and so they don't need that on their auto should they get in some sort of catastrophic accident. And so if they take a lesser amount, the concept and the theory that we have is that hopefully that price should be reduced. So obviously if people continue to choose the unlimited option, they may not see a lot of reduction in their auto insurance costs. But if they choose one of those other options, there's a good starting point for some reductions, as well as you will see, and this is a big one, is the MCCA cost that everybody sees on their bills, which has varied since I've been in office from $110 to $175. That now goes away. So even if you were to select the unlimited option, you will automatically save the $175 MCCA cost on your insurance. So you will see folks starting January 1. So my plan is to renew mine here in February and then renew it again in July, hopefully, so I can take advantage of those reductions.
I have a question about that too, in
Sure.
that are we going to be well informed that we have several options?
So yeah, part of the legislation was that insurance carriers have to notify folks. So as I've been talking to different companies that do the coverage, apparently they're going to send a letter with upcoming renewals and give folks an option to then say, here are some of the options that are available. And I'm not an insurance carrier, but apparently it'll be a form letter and people will be able to say, select from there. And that was part of the legislation that folks needed to be updated as to their options going forward. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
One
Okay.
thing, if I can, Mr. Adams,
Please.
is first thank Representative Iden. A lot of things that I don't think people are aware is how much in the last, since at least August of 16, I've leaned on him for advice and a little bit of mentoring and help in Lansing, and each and every time he has answered a call that day or had staff. He was instrumental in helping a couple years ago secure $55,000 additional dollars for road money, which we did a couple projects with. That was efforts of him and our senator. But personally, on behalf of us and all staff, thank you very much for how much attention you pay to Vicksburg and that.
Absolutely.
I will also mention, before you arrived, I did explain to everyone how many functions you have tonight, and you fit this in as a favor to Vicksburg. So I know you might have to step out right away, but I've already explained that to people that you have a couple more functions tonight, so.
Well, thanks. Always thanks for having me, and please feel free to reach out anytime, so.
Thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
I don't think we've got any more public officials in the audience tonight. I want to take a chance on that. And this is citizens' time for any agenda item you'd like to address. We have 4 minutes on the agenda if a citizen would like to step to the mic. If not, I'm going to go forward then and ask for approval of our consent agenda, which includes minutes of our working session January 6th, our warrant report of $188,000, and there's a graduation party for the Village of Vicksburg in that warrant report.
I'll make a motion, we accept into the general consent agenda.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved and supported. Tracy will do roll call.
Bailey?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Keller?
Yes.
Merrill?
Yes.
Reister?
Yes.
President Adams?
Yes. For council action items, we have for consideration some budgeted amendments for our approval. Jim?
Those budget amendments, we should have mentioned at the start, were what we discussed in the work session would be presented February 17th for the
Okay.
reasons discussed.
So no further discussion at this time.
Not on 10A, no, sir.
Okay, 10B?
Quoting from the General Law of Village Officials, Michigan Municipal League Handbook, in quotes, few municipalities have cash resources to finance facilities with large price tag and long life, such as a new municipal office, a new water treatment facility, a new civic center, or other long-term capital improvements. Most must incur debt in the form of a bond issue to finance such improvements to facilities, similar to a home buyer who must incur debt in the form of a mortgage. The incurring of debt by a municipality should be considered amongst the most serious of all courses of action available to a village council. End the quotes. A consistent goal of the village council throughout my tenure of being village manager has been to lower our millage rate. This action benefits all taxpaying citizens and businesses within the village of Vicksburg. I am proud to report that we met this goal on July 1st, 2019. The millage tax rate for the village of Vicksburg was lowered by nearly 0.5 mils. This was the first time in our village history that the millage tax rate was reduced without being required to do so by state of Michigan statute. I hope that it is a clear indicator to our citizens that we are governing on their behalf. Anytime that a long-established culture is impacted by the edict to improve, there are those that doubt, those that resist, and those that adapt. When the winds of change which have swept through our municipal government over the past 42 months first began, we all had a front row seat to this occurrence. I believe that this room tonight is filled with those that chose to adapt, those that chose to recognize the potential of the village of Vicksburg, and those that were willing to roll up their sleeves and commit to operating a municipal government based on best practices. For that, I thank all of you. As a municipal manager, I understand that it is not my job, nor your expectation, that I am liked by everyone. Instead, I'm charged with the expectation and responsibilities to make decisions that puts our village first, and that I provide this council with information and data so that the majority can set the policy that we, as staff, are charged with executing. It is also my firm devotion that we will operate a government with an unwavering foundation of unimpeachable integrity and absolute transparency to all. Within this packet, we have provided the Village Council with the past 3.5 years of staff recommendations. recommendations that have been supported and approved by the village councils, that have been motivated to meet the goal of reducing the millage, which accomplishment was articulated just minutes ago. For those approvals and support on behalf of our entire staff and myself, I extend a heartfelt thank you to this council. Though we have accomplished our goal of lowering the millage rate, it remains my firm advice and recommendation that we need to continue on the path of the past 3 fiscal years. We simply cannot return to the recent times of taking on projects that are too big in scope, not realistic in accomplishments, and created on financial mathematics that make no sense. We cannot return to an era that has subunits of government taking actions that have negative and at times dire consequences to the expectations and goals of this village council. We cannot return to the time period that has had our village engaging in practices that were not proper and performances that fell far short of basic municipal governance. It is my belief that the village council, subunits of government, and our public are beginning to understand what can be accomplished when a municipality of our size operates under the best practice model of municipal government. Each of you has been provided with the Michigan Municipal League statement contained in the General Law Village Officials Handbook, and I read to start this section of the meeting tonight. But again, in quotes, the incurring of debt by a municipality should be considered amongst the most serious of all courses of action available to a village council. I'm proud of the fact that we have not, in the past 3 fiscal year budgets, nor will we be presenting in the future 2020-2021 fiscal year budget presentation this June, any additional general fund debt obligation to this council. To continue on the journey that we have charted the past 3 fiscal years, it is vital that we continue to invest the village revenues wisely. To ensure that each dollar is entrusted to us withstands scrutiny, is ultra transparent, and has been provided an opportunity to reflect the wishes and desires of the majority. 2 major accomplishments have been reached that should demonstrate to the public we serve that we are committed to financial responsibility and transparency. The first is the addition of what we have titled a Financial Transparency Center. This can be found on our website when you click on the big banner that reads Financial Transparency. Once you click on that banner, it will take you to a page that is filled with the transparency of finances in our local government. At the bottom of that page is another banner titled the Village of Vicksburg Transparency Center. Within this section of the website, you will discover that anyone with access to the World Wide Web can see where each dollar of this village is committed to, where ongoing projects are, and the status contained within, and also other important communication involving our taxpayers' finances. I encourage everyone to visit and explore the depths of information that is provided. Speaking of our website, it has been completely redesigned and launched tonight. I encourage everyone to visit at vicksburgmi.org. The second accomplishment is implementing the services of streaming our governmental meetings, the first of which is taking place tonight. A person who has access to the World Wide Web will be able to view our governmental meetings from the comfort of their choice, as well as viewed archived videos of meetings well into the future. We are the first governmental unit in South Kalamazoo County to stream all governmental meetings. And I'd like to personally thank our Director of Community Engagement, Alex Lee, for ensuring this expectation was accomplished, as well as thank the man with the earphones on, Dominic Gladstone of Gladstone and Associates. Any municipality of any size, specifically those of smaller size, would be blessed to have his expertise assisting them. I will take the liberty to reinforce to everyone that our expectation as a staff is to continue to present financial plans that will provide the best opportunity to continue to lower the tax burden on our citizens. I believe that this will be possible again between the years 2024 and 2026. A millage reduction helps all taxpayers in the village, regardless of their lot in life or where they live in our village. Not only individuals, families, but businesses alike. This has and will always be my foundation that motivates me to serve as your village manager, to lower the financial burden for everyone while providing wow service at every opportunity we can. I certainly feel the financial burdens that some families and businesses are going through in our community. I'm the one that receives the phone calls about the struggles to pay utility bills days before they could be shut off. I'm the sole person with the responsibility to make this decision to shut those utility services off. I will say that there are a very slight few in our community who are late in paying their utility bill every single quarter, and to be blunt, they have not committed to establishing a personal budget and make a conscious decision that will meet their financial obligation. I stress this is a very slight few. However, there are many more who have relayed their situations, sometimes in strict confidence, and those stories have torn me apart. Stories that have motivated me to attempt to utilize every outside financial resource known, including Stephanie and I's own finances, to help those that are truly in need. These stories that motivate me on a daily basis to do everything I can as a leader of this municipality to ensure that the dollars that have been entrusted with us, dollars that are so precious to them, are invested in a manner that we all can be proud of. Unfortunately, the fact is we are operating an aging sewer system. Some parts date back to the early 1940s. We know that there will be critical needs in the not too distant future. It is imperative that we have our municipality in the best financial shape possible to address the anticipated and predictable upgrades that are needed to serve this community in the 2020s and beyond. An important aspect of being able to avoid taking on additional debt is to pay for capital improvements with cash money. Never more important in the village of Vicksburg than in this era. The capital improvement plan for the village of Vicksburg has been substandard at best and non-existent at worst. Last January, this village council began the shift in the philosophy of CIP for the village of Vicksburg when it voted to place money into certain governmental classifications. These classifications were dollars that we placed in the committed and assigned areas of municipal government. We've spent some time developing a capital improvement plan since that date and will continuously refine it, as well as when we present the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget this upcoming June. Our capital policy, approved by this council in 2018, establishes the parameters and capitalization thresholds for assets of the village. This list is developing and ongoing, as it will be presented in greater depth throughout the upcoming budget processes. We have focused on large capital assets based on policy expectations from this village council. We have provided the village council with a spreadsheet detailing the capital asset improvements and the annual schedule of purchase and/or replacements. This is the first of its kind in this detail for this village. Based on numerous recommendations of governmental oversight, we know that a minimum, I repeat, a minimum unrestricted, unassigned general fund balance should be at 20%. We also know that as recent as 2013, the villages of Vicksburg's unrestricted on-reserve fund was at less than 5%. We heard tonight that the 2018-2019 fiscal budget ended with over an unrestricted, unassigned general fund balance of 65%. If we add the committed general fund balance, it would be over 110%. This has been accomplished with a team effort. I'll begin with the most important person of that team, my wife, as I need to take this opportunity to thank her for her support and understanding during stretches of days with long hours, after hours of long phone calls and inquiries, and countless interruptions of time that should be spent with family. The largest and most important thank you and gratitude I extend tonight is to my wife of 26 years, Stephanie. Thank you. Michelle Morgan has been a needed rock of stability in our office, committed to doing what is right, and knowing there is never a right time to do what is wrong. Her leadership of the office staff has been impactful and much appreciated. Denise Harold has been a godsend to this village. Placed in the precarious position of utility clerk, she has performed with nothing but calm professionalism and a willingness to solve problems. We continue to constantly review and improve our utility invoicing, and the credit for this in large part goes to Denise. Randy Skippers is a true leader in every sense of the word. The efforts of the DPW crew are unmatched for any municipality our size. Just this past week, our public witnessed those efforts in a significant snowfall in which our streets and majority of sidewalks were cleared by the time they woke up. What our public does not see and is not readily observed by individuals outside the DPW is the amount of love and passion that this crew puts in to their responsibilities. Randy and the team he leads personally upkeep and repair our fleet of aging vehicles, which this week alone, their efforts saved our taxpayers in excess of $1,000 on plow truck equipment needs that would have taken trucks out of service, had outside vendors repair, but their passion, pride, and skill set, there isn't a challenge that they won't accept. Thank you, Randy, and please extend our gratitude to your team. Our police chief, Scott Sanderson, has implemented a plan of community interaction and service. This has placed a distinct value to our investment in the department and our team of officers. With Scott's assistance, the days of discontent and division have faded to a distant memory. Financially, the department is 47% of our general fund revenue, and in part, due to Scott's leadership, this is reduced from over 55% in recent years. The community interactions with the neighborhood and business canvassing each shift, being in front of all schools at drop-off and pick-off times, and the summer youth programs are a credit to Chief Sanderson and his team, as well as demonstrating their love for the community they serve. As always, our officers' safety is in my daily prayers. Steve Breyer and Ann Knaffel from Siegfried Crandall have added a layer of experience unmatched within our office. Their advice and work product as it relates to financial matters has been invaluable to our team, and I extend our thanks to them. Next is our newest team member, Mr. Alex Lee. I cannot properly convey how much I appreciate you accepting your position with the village. Your calm demeanor, commitment to doing what is right, and service to others above self is unmatched. Our village is blessed to have you among its ranks. Thank you. I'm again pleased to report that we have not had any payroll penalties from the IRS, contacts from unpaid vendors, nor threats of repossession of heavy machinery in the past 3 fiscal years. The system put in place and Tracy Losey's performance and oversight of that deserves recognition and all of our appreciation. Thank you. Last, and maybe most important for me as your direct subordinate, is my gratitude to the members of past village councils and the current village council for your support and understanding during this era of change. I'm quite aware of what the winds of change bring to a long-established culture. I'm comforted that we are well on our way to becoming a model municipality of our size. The journey has been enlightening, entertaining, and educating the past 42 months as your village manager. I'm very proud of the accomplishments of our team, and I look forward to our future. I spoke 2 years ago and reinforced last year that it will take 5 years to become the model municipality of our size in our country. I remain committed to this expectation. The expectation that we will be the model municipality our size. To reach this expectation, we will need to faithfully pledge and re-pledge with our professional integrity on the line that we will be fiscally responsible and thoroughly transparent in our actions. And I pledge before each of you present, those that are viewing us live, and all who may watch this archived video in the future, that I will do my absolute best to ensure each and every dollar entrusted to the team that I lead will be cared with fiscal responsibility, and that we will be transparent in every single action we take. Most important to me, I pledge this with the full and accepting knowledge that my professional integrity is on the line if we should fail. I've never been more confident that we will reach our expectations as well as the goals we have placed before us. The future is definitely bright in the village of Vicksburg. Others in municipal work must be jealous of the opportunities that are on the horizon of our journey in this village. Tonight, I'm pleased and proud to present Resolution 01202020-1 that will firmly demonstrate to the citizens we serve that a new era in municipal government in our village that was initiated last year is continuing. Staff will recommend that we utilize 2 specific categories using the definitions provided by GASB Statement Number 54. The first being a committed fund balance. The definition includes amounts that can be used only for the specific purposes determined by a formal action of the Village of Vicksburg Council by means of a resolution. The authority to commit is commitments will only be used for specific purposes pursuant to a formal action by a village council. A majority vote is required to approve a commitment, and a majority vote is required to remove a commitment. The second category will be assigned fund balances. Definition, it includes amounts intended to be used by the village for specific purposes, but do not meet the criteria to be classified as restricted or committed, determined by a formal action of the Village of Vicksburg Council by means of a motion. In governmental funds other than the general fund, assigned fund balance represents the remaining amount that is not restricted or committed. The authority is assignments will only be used for specific purposes pursuant to a formal action of the council. A majority vote is required to approve an assignment, and a majority vote is required to remove an assignment. Staff is recommending for approval to commit an amount of unrestricted unassigned general fund balance to the continuation of a tax stabilization fund. We'll be recommending for approval to commit an amount of unrestricted unassigned general fund balance for saving for a municipal building, and assign an amount of unrestricted unassigned general balance to additional capital asset needs. A tax stabilization fund is self-described and was approved last year. This fund is a mechanism in governmental accounting standards that allows us to commit monies to that will enable us to lower the millage rate in the future. The money saved in this fund could be used in the future if the current general fund revenues were not covering general fund liabilities, or a single action item necessitated the use of those funds. In either scenario, the use of the saved money would require village council approval. I am recommending for approval that will continue to have $150,000 of unrestricted unassigned general fund balance be committed to the establishment of a tax stabilization fund. The previous village council supported staff's recommendation to begin saving for a municipal building. Once again, our goal as a professional staff is to advise the councils of strategies that will avoid debt. Previously, we assigned or committed $550,000 to a municipal building. We placed in the 2019-2020 fiscal year $25,000 of that money for initial soil and other testing at the proposed site. I'm recommending for approval an additional $250,000 of unrestricted general fund balance be committed to a municipal building balance. The total cash balance will be $775,000. It is anticipated that we will have a cash balance in the 22-23 fiscal year that will enable the village council at that time to debate and decide on the options of a new or updated municipal building. We again emphasize we feel it is our responsibility to place the village in the best position that will become debt-free. The total commitments of the two are at $925,000. The following capital asset improvement items and the associated dollar amounts are recommended for approval to be transferred from the unassigned unrestricted general fund balance to the assignment classification. A 100 by 60 pole barn for our Department of Public Works, which has a lifespan of 75 years, to be assigned $100,000. We're anticipating having a budget of $200,000 and being able to build that in the next fiscal year utilizing revenue that comes in 2021. Once we present within a budget, we'll get further into the weeds with more details on what necessitates the needs, so we're clear and transparent to the public we serve that we are not only saving money in paying for things in cash, but we're waiting until it's a need of the village. These are certainly not luxuries. Also, much in the way of a tax stabilization plan, we believe it is prudent to begin a defined benefit pension reserve. Our recommendation is to place $20,000 in that reserve account and do that for 5 consecutive years. Continuing with DPW equipment, $63,170 into a dump and plow truck fund. DPW heavy equipment, $36,000. DPW crane and tool truck, $8,000. DPW Bobcat, $7,500. DPW pickups, $26,500. Police vehicles, $33,000. Police weapon systems, $4,000. Police communications, $5,000. Technology needs, $17,967. Parks and Recs needs, $60,000. Large parking lot, which is the parking lot behind the hardware store, $20,000. I've provided the council with spreadsheets over the next 6 years that make up a capital plan and demonstrate in each year on a conservative basis how this plan will become fully funded And the premise is on the money that we save, expenditures under revenues, we will identify those assignment and commitment needs into the future and have that cash on hand in the year that capital need is required to operate a municipality our size. Thus, what that saves is having to utilize that year's fiscal revenue for a need that we were able to identify years prior. Or in other words, each year we will have an amount of money on the fiscal revenue of that year in case an unforeseen emergency occurs, which puts our municipality in the top tier as articulated by the outside auditor and outside accountant who work with hundreds of municipalities. Municipalities our size, it was their presentation at 6 o'clock, simply do not operate in this manner, and this again meets the expectations of best practices. The total amount of assigned money would be $401,137. This will leave Vicksburg meeting the 20% minimum unrestricted unreserved money at $313,308. I'll pause here for any questions that the council might have.
Perhaps not a question, but a little clarity on the building fund. Did we see a necessity to increase that over past years, or was that our goal always at $750,000?
Our goal
1.25
is to
setting-
have about between 1.3 and 1.5 million for a municipal building in the years 2022 and 2023, working at a high altitude with municipal contractors, general contractors, and looking at the prices of recent buildings. We're certainly talking a very modest building that can function for this municipality with the cost. We believe that it's with a 20% contingency, but that we'd have cash on hand again to put a municipal building that certainly is not a Taj Mahal or anything extravagant at all. It's a bare bones need.
Well, the biggest thing is that the facility would be ADA compliant, number one, which currently we don't have. Number two, we have our communications director sitting out in the lobby.
Yeah, if the
So-
the reality is, we're meeting in this room. This isn't a municipal building. We rent this room to hold this meeting in, and we have a great working relationship with Mr. Bill Mears, and certainly recognized him at the 6 o'clock meeting for his investment in this room, including the new tables tonight that allows us to appropriately get the mics and sound system all working. Most everyone in this room who's ever met with me has met with me outside of Village Hall. You can't have a private conversation in Village Hall, and it just doesn't meet the needs at all on several fronts.
I think you began your presentation with a recommendation that we approve resolution.
We have a resolution that has been handed to each council member in front of them.
Okay.
That articulates,
I think it covers what you did, and the chair would like to entertain a motion for approval of the same.
I'll make a motion of support for resolution 012020220-1.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments there?
do we need to, can we ask the clerk if the resolution needs to be read, or is there any?
It doesn't have to.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Holmes?
No.
Would just like to share some comments with council. Last year, I was the only council member that did not vote in the affirmative for this. Was through the last year, I've had an opportunity to work on the Finance Committee with Jim as well as other council members. Also, as it relates to the primary issue I had last year was simply, in looking at unrestricted funds, I felt that there may be an opportunity for greater tax relief. The one thing that's very clear, as you heard the passion in the village manager's voice, is that he's committed to working with people in this community and working with us to helping reduce the millage rates, as well as increasing the quality of life through other means. But my point simply being this, and that is, a year later, a different perspective. I think as the village manager, as Mr. Mallory said, there is a commitment to further looking to reduce millage rates. I appreciate that. Also, we had a very robust discussion regarding the necessity for a village hall. A lot of information I was not aware of, because I was not on the council when the decision was made to begin funding over a period of time to build the village hall. Having said that, I definitely will vote in the affirmative this year for this. And I just wanted to share with you those comments because, again, that was a vote last year that probably stood out as it relates to this council.
Okay.
And I'd just like to, I appreciate Rick kind of saying that, and the biggest thing for me is that, so the citizens understand, we're not careening from disaster to disaster anymore like we used to do. And that was the biggest thing. I mean, we were putting things on the village credit card that you can't do that. And so now we're at least being proactive, which I think it's being a lot more. I wish our state and federal government would do this, that they would look ahead to things. So, you know, I fully thank the staff and Jim for what they've done and going through this and getting to all the committees and getting the wants, wishes, and needs, and so that everybody has a say in, you know, what they may not get everything they want, but at least they know that we listen and we're doing the best we can, and we're not going to put things on the village credit card anymore. So.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? I think we're ready for roll call, Tracy.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Merrill,
Yes.
Reister,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
President Adams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hazardous waste report?
Yes,
Tracy?
Tracy, do you have that in front of you where you can, Tracy Losi will handle that.
Okay. I think we saw it, didn't we?
You do in your
It's in our packet, Tracy.
Yes, you have a copy of the agreement for 2020 in your packet. In the current fiscal year, we allocated $1,150 towards the program and have not exceeded the, maximum funds to be allowed for that. So our recommendation as staff would be to enter into the 2020 agreement for the $1,150.
Okay. Chair would like to entertain a motion for same.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion on the hazardous waste recommendations? Hearing none, we'll do roll call.
Holmes,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Merrill,
Yes.
Reister,
Yes.
Bailey,
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
President Adams.
Yes. The agenda shows a village manager's report.
I consider we just went through that.
I was hoping.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Department and committee reports, Michigan Township Services. Jim?
I talked to, or text back and forth with Steve. He was off over the Christmas holidays, but there's no report. There was an issue out at one of the homes that was being built that wasn't inspected, and that there was a mix-up on the address that's been rectified and should be handled tomorrow. So we should be all good there. So.
Okay. Thank you for that update. This is citizens' comment time on any non-agenda item. We have 3 minutes If someone would like to approach the podium and state their name and address. It is President's time. I want to remind everyone that we have 2 openings on the Parks and Rec Committee. I look forward to working with the Human Resource Committee and the Chairman of Parks and Rec to make sure we fill those positions over the next couple months. And I think a target date would be to have our investigations done as it's sometime in March with a recommendation there. And I would just say this is, you know, several years of outstanding financial performance for the staff and for the council. It's good news, good news. We appreciate the efforts. We know this takes a lot of effort and time. We appreciate all the extra effort and time the staff puts in and the love you show this village. So thank you very much. With that, it's council members' time. And Colin, can you tell us how we look on TV tonight?
We all look good, Bill. You need a little work.
Okay.
No crack about the headshine.
No, mine's doing it too. Just to commend Jim, you guys put together a great thing here, and anxious to move forward with the rest of the year with you guys.
Okay. Gail?
Yeah, I would like to just thank Jim and the entire staff for the presentation. A lot of work goes into putting that together, and so I appreciate all the time and effort that went into putting that together. It makes it so much easier for us to hear and understand, so thank you so much for that. I would like to request that the temperature in this room be lowered next time. I am dying up here. So please, it's very warm in this, so if it can be lowered, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Frisbee?
Well, I'd first like to wish Mr. Jim Mallory happy birthday.
Maybe we should sing happy birthday. Huh? You want, can I lead us off? Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jimmy. Happy birthday to you.
Is this where I
All
take
right.
liberty and tell my mother, who is watching this in Saginaw, Michigan, this love is
Hi,
showing
Mom.
every meeting.
Oh, today.
All right.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not
That
done?
one,
Good, good.
Hopefully, Steve Ryer and Aaron went home and watched this either at their office or at work. But I wanted to just tell them thank you for their due diligence. You know, Steve Ryer with Sigfrid Kondo and Eric doing the audit has been a tremendous asset to our team. I want to thank President Adams for having the foresight, you know, back in 2015 to know this village was in deep trouble, and to seeking out the advice of the state and the county and local officials, and ultimately signing Jim Mallory as village manager. So thank you. Thank you all that was involved in that. Ultimately, we're here celebrating our success due to Jim and his team, and Michelle Morgan, Tracy Losey, Denise Harold, Scott Sanderson, Randy Schippers, and the DPW team, and of course, Mrs. Stephanie Mallory. If there was ever a question or doubt of the success that Jim would have on this community, I think the last 2 years audit report would put that we are all on the right path to success in this community. So thank you.
Carl?
I don't add a whole lot other than I too appreciate everything that the staff does, and also Jim. This last year, I'm sure for Rick and I, has been even more of an education. I was on the planning commission for a number of years and was involved with you at a lower level, but I have a greater appreciation for everything that you guys do every day. And Randy especially, I heard the plow trucks going by at must have been 4 a.m. Sunday or Saturday morning, and so I appreciate everything you guys do, so thank you very much.
Rick?
Ditto to everything that's been said, and the only thing I could think, Jim, that probably is more joyful for me than working with you now was actually running around with kids on the field as we're coaching them in football. One of the things I'd like to share is that, you know, in the private world, I've done budgets for small companies, large companies. I built my own company, and I can tell you, folks, that it's one of the most difficult things in the world you do, and the reason for it is it's not just putting it together, it's actually following it. It's making sure that you execute, and execution is one of the more difficult things because you have to be humble when you do it. You have to follow what you put together, and that's the key thing that I see here. It's not the paper, the auditors, it's great to hear those comments, but it's the execution of what's being done in this community that I hope people really appreciate, because I do. Because I know what goes into it, Jim. It's not easy. And being part of the finance committee with others on the council, it really gives you perspective on the effort that is really going into this, because this isn't by chance and it's not by luck. And so thank you, sincere thanks. And very quickly, would also like to thank Sarah Josie from the county clerk office from coming. I did talk with Sarah just regarding my follow-up regarding the Charter Township initiative with Schoolcraft, and she shared some insight there, and through that, she came and talked to us. Also, want to share with you something, completing full circle. Josh Beard came to us, I think it was March, April last year, regarding the Field of Dreams that he's putting together, him and his group over in Schoolcraft. And I had an opportunity to meet with Josh recently, and I don't know if you folks are aware of this, but that field is a $700,000 field. It's a whole lot of money that's going into that. And I hope I got my numbers right, Josh. But they got 600,000 of it, and they're still working. They're still working hard in the community to make this happen for all kids, so that all kids have a chance to play. So if you have a chance, please go support them, donate money to them, and donate time when they get going, because it's just a great cause for the kids to be able to play sports in the community as well. So.
Yep. Thank you. And Julie?
Thank you so much for all your hard work, Jim, and everybody else. Thanks.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned.